Welcome to Scene Change, a podcast by the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division. All about equality, opportunity, accessibility, and the arts. Here, you'll learn adaptive techniques from performers in the know. We are changing what it means to be blind, one stage at a time. Thank you for joining us today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scene Change. I'm Lizzy Muhammad Park, the Vice President of the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division, and your host of the show. Today's show is a joint episode with the Pacific Opera Project. So, I am so fortunate to be joined by Jennifer Miller Hamill, the host of Poppercast. She's co-hosting with me today, and I don't need to welcome you to the show, Jennifer, because in this case, we're contemporaries. But could you just briefly introduce yourself to the Scene Change listeners?
Sure. I'm Jennifer Miller Hamill. I've been the host of the Poppercast since May was when I started. So I'm still fairly new to Poppercast, but I've been a fan of pop for as long as it's been around. I'm a classical radio host in Southern California. So this is definitely taking two things I love, which is singing opera and talking about opera, and putting it together under the guise of our friends here at Pacific Opera Project. So, Lizzy, it is an absolute blast to be with you today. And I know that pop listeners are excited to learn more about this production and about the Scene Change podcast. So this is going to be a very exciting conversation with you and several new friends, new voices that we are going to hear from today.
I totally agree. Yes, I'm so glad to be on the Poppercast with you all. So as I've said, my name is Lizzy Muhammad Park, and my position as far as the NFB goes, but Scene Change itself has been around just over a year now. And we are so excited to essentially do what our name says, change the scenery around accessibility. We'd like to create more inclusion and more accessibility as far as the performing arts goes. So please do check us out, especially if you have any questions about performing arts and how to make them more accessible.
Absolutely. So we have several guests with us today. This is a nice big round table of folks that are going to be involved in Pacific Opera Project's upcoming production of Tchaikovsky's Iolanta. Starting with Josh Shaw, Artistic Director of Pacific Opera Project. Josh, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thrilled about this whole project and to get going on it.
We also have Cristina Jones, who is going to be singing our Iolanta. Cristina, it is so exciting to have you with us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And then we have Issac, who is going to be the music director and conductor for this production. Issac has a history with this opera, actually, which we'll learn more about a little bit later on. But Issac, thank you so much.
You are certainly welcome. Thanks for having me here.
And then, Lizzy, would you like to introduce one of your colleagues who's joining us today also?
Sure. So today we are so fortunate to have Katelyn McIntyre. She's been on Scene Change a few times before, but this will be her first time with Poppercast. Katelyn is the president of the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division. Welcome to the show, Katelyn.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you all.
Christina, why don't we start with you? Would you mind just sharing with us, how did you find POP?
So I've known about Pacific Opera Project for quite a long time. Their amazing reputation for really modernizing a lot of opera productions and things like that precedes them. And I am a native of Southern California. You know, it was always fun to go to some of their shows or auditions or things like that. And when the pandemic started last year, Josh contacted me and asked me if I was interested in possibly looking at this particular production, because there was a blind character, and he was hoping that we could possibly collaborate and turn it into something that could do some good in the world, and we can pull it out and change it a little bit so that it would be a little bit more friendly to the masses, so to speak.
And Katelyn, I'm assuming that you found out about the Pacific Opera Project through Christina, right?
Yeah, I have heard of you all. Also, having been born in Southern California and doing my undergrad out there, and having known people who have worked with you, and so definitely, again, a great reputation. But yes, as far as this collaboration, I'm so excited to see Christina be in this role and just learn. Excited that you all are working toward authentic casting and more representation of people with disabilities in the arts. That's fantastic.
Here, here. And then both Joshua and Isaac, could you all describe to our listeners what your role is and what role you will have in the show coming up?
Sure. So I'm Josh Shaw. I'm the founding artistic director of Pacific Opera Project, and I will direct the show and design the show. And this was my idea, I guess. A lot of these things we do at Pop, there's this moment where I can kind of pinpoint where I came up with the idea for a show or a concept. This one, I was just trying to think before we got on air, when this came to mind, and I can't pinpoint it. I know when Christina came and auditioned for us a couple of years for when we were doing the Magic Flute, and she came in and just blew me away in her audition. I think I had her sing 3 things, maybe. She sang Queen of the Night and Lucia, and I think something else as well. And I just kind of filed her away, as someone I want to work with at some point. And then I don't know where this whole Iolanta came onto my radar. I know Isaac had done it. Maybe it's very possible that it got on my radar when Isaac did it at his company.
Yeah, I'd like to take credit for that, or blame, as it might be.
We'll see how it turns out. I know. I know.
Okay,
so, what year did you guys do this?
We did it in 2018.
Sounds about right. Sounds about the timing. Let's just make that the story from now on.
Yeah, so I'm based in Cincinnati. I'm artistic director at Queen City Opera, which is another company in the network of kind of independent opera companies. And when we pick productions, we try to focus on some kind of contemporary issue that we can start a conversation about. So I first discovered Iolanta when the Met did it. I think it was like 2016. And I was so blown away by the piece that I started learning Russian just to do this. And my role in this production at Pop is going to be music director and conductor. And I remember speaking with Josh with this story that we're going with now about just like how smoothly the piece had gone and how it really started a conversation in the community and got a kind of turnout from multiple constituencies. That we had people who were involved with the Cincinnati Association for the Blind Visually Impaired. We had people involved with disability advocacy and representation. We had people who were just like native Russian speakers and really wanted to see this. So it really brought everyone together to kind of drop their guard and engage with many perspectives on this issue.
Talk about accessibility. It sounds like that's an aspect that's really embedded into not pop culture, but pops culture.
Nice. I like it.
And it's just something that I noticed was a part of the mission statement on the website, and it's very refreshing to see. Where did that come from? Where did the idea to perform Iolanta come from? When did this all start? This true commitment to accessibility, both for people with disabilities, for people of various languages and things like that.
Yeah, I'd love to speak on that because I think Isaac's company and Pop actually come at it pretty different. Not this production, but all of our productions. As he said, they're very much always looking for productions that have a speak to some social or political. I won't say political.
But we say contemporary.
Some aspect. And we like doing that at Pop too, but this production and really everything I do at Pop is more about finding a way to tell a story in a new way, or finding a way to tell stories, operas, in ways that reach out to different groups of people, so that I get new people in the door. That's all I want. That's my whole mission in life, is to get more people to the opera. And doing something like this that not only it has a great hook and reaches out to the blind community, but also it's our first Russian opera, and there's a big Russian community in LA. So for me, it's about doing things a little different so that we get new people in the door. This started, probably, man, I could look back at my emails, but I think I approached Issac first before I even talked to Christina about this. So that was probably late 18, early 19, maybe.
Yeah, that rings a bell. So remember, we were looking at it pre-pandemic, and I was like, "Oh, great! When's this going to happen?"
Mm-hmm.
So in real time, a couple of years. In pandemic time, like a decade ago.
So, Katelyn, it's wonderful to have you join us for our very first collaboration with the National Federation for the Blind here at Pacific Opera Project, especially on such a special and unique opera. As a performer and teacher yourself, I'm sure there's a lot of excitement surrounding what we are about to do with this production. What are you most excited about as we are ramping up into this collaboration?
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I'm so excited. We love, finding out about what other organizations in the arts are doing and joining together and collaborating. So this is great. And yeah, as someone, I also have a somewhat similar background to Christina, where I have pursued my Master of Music and Vocal Performance and done a bit of performing and teaching as well. And so for me, something we're really passionate about in the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division is authentic representation of people with disabilities and inclusion of blind people in the entertainment industry at all levels, whether that's as an actor, as a singer, even as a musician in the orchestra, as down the road, artistic director, other things like that in various positions, writing screenplays, writing libretti and things like that. So to see Pop, take an active role in that and casting Christina in this role, making sure that that role is going to be something that represents blind people well and authentically, that is really exciting and something that we are totally behind in the NFB. And so, yeah, that's, a major goal of ours is just to continue to support and encourage, inclusion and authenticity and representation in the entertainment industry at all levels. And so it is an exciting adventure, and I can't wait to hear this production. It's going to be amazing.
Absolutely. I agree. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Exactly. And I mean, inclusion is huge. And I know in the NFB, we focus a lot on, and that is the National Federation of the Blind, for the Poppercast listeners, we focus a lot on inclusion as far as performers go. But one thing that Pop does is they actually make sure that the audience is 100% included as well. Josh, could you tell us some of the features that are available to audience members with disabilities?
Sure. I mean, this is the first time we're doing anything like this, so really, every time I talk to Christina, I just say, "Tell me what I'm missing. What do I not know? Because it's everything." Um, so we do plan to have Braille programs, and we are working on getting our website more accessible, which is something brand new for us. Um, and then from there, I'm not sure what else we're gonna
Well,
try
Christina, why don't you
everything
help
we
them
can
out?
come up with, but it affects the process so much. For instance, like, I've spent the last week getting the super titles just right, so that we have that now way out in it. That would usually be like the week of the show where that usually happens. But so that we have those ready to go, so we can start that whole process now and make sure everything's ready by opening night.
I guess the only thing that I will say is that Josh Josh and Issac have both been excellent in, approaching me and saying, how can I help? How can I help? How can I help? Um, and I'm not really shy about about asking for, specific accommodations or things like that, or modifications. So it's been, I think, a surprise to me, that they've been so mindful moving forward, and they've approached me about, possibly having the opera described, for people who are blind as well. And I know we're looking into that and seeing how that can be done. And they're just they're definitely doing an amazing job in going above and beyond and just making sure that this is going to be something that will be accessible to everybody. And I really appreciate that.
So part of getting that accessibility is, picking specific venues, specific shows, and tailoring that experience, of course, for many audiences. And Josh, I think the closest that Pop has come to this in the past was when you were putting together the English and Japanese version of Madame Butterfly that was also done at the Aratani. What did you learn from that experience that you're taking into creating this experience for Iolanta?
Well, that was, highlight of my career. I guess this will be the next highlight. But um, it's just everything takes a little more time, a little more effort. But in that case, and I'm sure it will be in this one, the payoff was just, I can't describe how wonderful it was to have an audience, just full of Japanese people and Japanese Americans, which we would never have reached. And many of those have come back to see other things since then, which is kind of our whole mission here. So we're really hoping to see that. We went to the same. We figured it worked in that venue once. We'll try it at that venue again.
It's a good luck
But
charm, right?
it's a great venue. It's 800 and something seats, but feels pretty small, and has a nice pit that we might fit everybody into, and top of the line tech too. So it's very comfortable for Pop. Pop goes to so many locations. This is like one of our more comfortable, traditional, but very nice places.
Now, we discussed the ways in which Pop has made the audience side accessible, but now I'm curious to know, and this would come from both Christina, Josh, and Isaac also, if you have anything else to add. What has Pop done to make the casting and auditions process more accessible to the blind performer?
Oh well, I mean, I'll be completely honest. I never even thought about it until Christina walked in one day. So, but I mean, we try to make Pop from the very beginning. Has tried, many most of us on this call right now know what it's like auditioning for opera in this country. It's expensive. It's
Mhm.
difficult. You got to go, to New York or LA usually. So now I'm hoping that a lot of us are going to do a lot more um, casting through video, or at least screening through video, to save singers time and money and effort. And that's what we're doing. We'll announce auditions next week, and they're going to be completely digital, at least for the first round, so that it really costs. And we're going to provide even like I mean, every audition's different. This is very specific for some specific shows. We're going to say we want to hear these 30 seconds to a minute, and we'll provide tracks for them if they want to use that, or they can hire a pianist and do it in their living room. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money or be fancy. um, and we're just going to try to make it where the talent can come through regardless of how much money you have to spend on a studio or travel or any of that. So that's what we're focusing on right now.
So this leads us to our star, Iolanta herself, Cristina Jones. Christina, I know that Pop audiences are very excited to hear your gorgeous voice in this production. And we're definitely going to get more into your background on a later episode of the Poppercast. But I was wondering if you could just give us some highlights on what your journey to the opera stage has been like.
Well, so that's tricky. But my journey has been kind of up and down. I mean, I think it has been for everybody,
Mhm.
who tries to pursue, who wants to pursue opera. But I think for someone with a disability, like a visible disability in particular, it's up and down in a very particular way, and it's not necessarily always tied to the blindness, but it also sometimes is. And I think, in the past for me, I, and this was definitely before I auditioned for Pop, but I found myself really judicious about when and how I would disclose my disability to casting agents, or whoever I would be going to audition for. And I wouldn't directly say, hey, ps, I'm blind, can you come and grab me, like it was always like, oh, by the way, I'll be the one with the cute guide dog, can you come and can you, if you spot me wandering around, can you come, can you come and fetch me, or something like that. Or, like I would say it in a very indirect way, which didn't serve me or my community well at all. And I think it was something that was really deeply ingrained into me, unintentionally by people who, were very, they meant well, and they were, very loving, but it taught me to be very much ashamed of the fact that I am blind, and it's very much like, somebody who might be of a different ethnicity or something like that. It's something you can't necessarily help, but it's also, these messages that we inadvertently might accidentally give to a person. So for me, I think, my audition with Pop was really refreshing, because it was one of the first auditions that I was completely blunt about the fact that I was blind. So that was part of it. I felt really myself, when I walked through the door. I remember emailing and, specifically saying, hey, by the way, I'm blind. Would it be possible for me to get, a phone number or something, just in case I find myself at a loss for where I am. I'm going to be taking, the train or an Uber in. I'm not exactly sure which. I haven't decided yet, but, I might need some help. And she was great. She responded right away. There was no balking from the fact that I had a disability. And, when I walked in, it was very much, I gave myself permission to be less self-conscious about my disability. And, like I walked in with my guide dog, and, I had him on a downstay, like under the piano or something like that, while I did my audition. And, for me, it was a really refreshing feeling to go and, just at the end of my audition say, hey, obviously I'm blind. Do you have any questions about, how I get around, or, do anything? And, Josh was just like, no, if we have any questions, we'll ask, and he's been great at fulfilling that word. So, I think, for me, it's not so much been a journey of, um, how things have gone for me from, an operatic standpoint. And that's definitely part of it. But I have found that the more honest I have been with myself and with others, as far as letting myself be really honest and really blunt, and putting that boundary in place for myself, that I will not deny myself the opportunity to be honest about how I'm feeling, or honest about, myself. That's, I have found that I have been more successful because of that.
Wow.
Can
Thank
I
you
just
so
jump
much.
in
Go
too
for
and
it.
just say that's so great to hear, Christina, because that's something I think we really celebrate in the National Federation of the Blind, is that one of our past presidents said it's respectable to be blind. It's
Mm-hmm.
not something that we need to be ashamed of. It's a part of our identity. It's not our defining characteristic, but it is one of our characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to to know that, and to understand that's a part of who we are, and not be embarrassed by that. Of course, everyone's journey is different, and it takes time to come to terms with that, and every situation is different. But I love that you shared that, because it is truly respectable to be blind, and it is a wonderful part of who you are.
And thanks for being part of that journey with me.
Yeah.
Indeed, it is respectable to be blind. Another, big issue that the NFB pushes for. I mean, I don't know how many of the Poppercast listeners have heard about the controversy surrounding able-bodied people portraying or playing disabled characters, but it happens very often, and it's something that the NFB is really pushing to change. So, the question that I have, do you think, because I feel like you're very forward thinking, do you think that companies in the future will be willing to hire blind people to play, say, for example, sighted characters, or disabled people to play able bodied characters? And I'm thinking of this. They are literally the same way a sighted person would use a cane or a guide dog or whatever to portray the blind person. In this case, the blind person would not be using a cane or any sort of mobility device, and they would just play the sighted person?
So that's a great question. I would say yes. My approach to opera is very much from the musician's perspective. That really the only thing that matters is what it sounds like and the authenticity of the emotions. So if someone is singing about a discovery in their life, or about heartbreak, or about love, or about loss, I mean, those are things that are universal emotions that everybody can find in their own experience. And the only facet of opera that might need a little bit of adjustment is the logistics. So I can tell you, like, from my perspective, most of my job in opera is to wave a stick that musicians then look at and get information from about, like, how fast to go, or when to do things. And this opera and this production is stretching me in certain ways to figure out how to get my job done without all of my tools available. And that's okay. It's not only possible, I think it's stretching me and stretching all of the musicians involved in a good way. And I mean, to Tchaikovsky's credit, I think this piece in particular, he was good enough of a dramaturg to know that even if a sighted singer is playing Iolanta, it doesn't make sense for the character to be looking at the conductor. So there are a lot of transitions where the singer kind of leads and sets the tempo and sets the phrase going, and then the conductor can then communicate that information to the orchestra. But also, the process that Christina and I have just started on is much more detailed and like really down to the point about setting tempi way far in advance in a way that I've never done, that I think is going to give us a very secure product that I would recommend doing for any production. It's like I've just been making some recordings and sending them to her, and it's really forcing me to get my house in order of, like, how fast should this go? How does this transition happen? Instead of kind of leaving it up to, we'll figure it out in the rehearsal, I'll just wave the stick and they'll see it.
So, Isaac, this is really great because this segues into a question actually for you, Josh, and Christina. Because, Josh, I know you and I were talking that this is definitely a different approach for you when you've been designing this production, because, of course, you've had Christina in mind for so long for this role. How has directing this been different for you compared to something like Cenerentola or Don Procopio?
On so many levels, which is so fun for me. Selfishly, it's just so nice to have, like, a new. I mean, look, this is like the 80th opera I've directed in the last 10 years, so it's nice to have, like, a new stretch is the right word. Like, I have to be I think I'm known for being ahead of the game as a director usually in terms of preparation, but this is even, I got to think further ahead. And so, every time I open the score, I jot down a new question. I need to ask Christina, well, how are we going to make this happen? Or, what would help you here? And then we're not even to the questions of, like, would a blind person do this here? We haven't even gotten to those questions yet. For the design, I just give a little thought as to, things that could help give bearings. And we've talked a little bit about, things that could be on the stage itself, like say a rug or something that gives, defines a space. So that's going to be interesting. I'm also trying to balance that with, we're really pushing at Pop for this to be a big production. So trying to balance an ambitious set, size-wise, with this is also, a big part of it. So it's just going to be real interesting, I think, for everybody involved. I think the other singers involved are excited too. They've never done anything like this either.
Yeah, and Christina, to you, there are so many firsts involved in this show for Pacific Opera Project. Our first Russian opera, the first opera that features a blind singer in the lead role. What are you most excited about with bringing this Russian princess to life for pop audiences?
I think the main thing really is that I'm excited for the good that it will do for the blindness community. And honestly, for the theatrical and operatic community, because I think it's really easy to look at any of our scores and operas, and and sit there and go, oh, it says this, so we have to stick it, keep it this way, either that or we really need to modernize and change the whole thing. And that's not necessarily the case. A lot of it for me is about interpretation. So I think, for me, that's the most exciting thing. And the fact that, I personally feel like we're going to break some ground in this. And I genuinely do believe that if we do this, and I think we will do it right and well, that that I think, this could be a production that will be repeated in future. So, I think that this would really, really open things up for the blindness community, but also I think this would be more progressive, really, for the opera world as a whole. And I'm really excited about that and being part of that.
Yeah, I love what you mentioned about interpretation and also this being a very progressive role. Um, so I have a question for both you and Josh because the two of you seem to work very well together, especially as far as adapting new ideas goes. So hypothetically, if there were a role that was originally written, say for example, just a teacher, it doesn't specify who this teacher is exactly, not to the T, but there's an assumption that this teacher is cited. Do either or both of you see a future, uh, preferably a near future, where this teacher or this character, who it was assumed to be sighted, could be played by a blind person, in this case, using mobility devices, and essentially just, you have a role, it's not incredibly specific as far as that goes. Could you just make that character blind?
Sure. I mean, I put Mozart in space. You can do anything, but it's the questions are always: does it serve the story? Which I could easily understand how it would in certain cases. And is this the most talented person for the job? Um, that's the bottom line, and it could easily those could all line up, you know, easily. I think.
I think that we're pretty much there, and I think that it's, I think it also hopefully will be bringing a message soon that that our mobility devices or our very visible signals to the world that we are disabled are not a sign of weakness or are not ugly, but they're part of us, and that makes them, that makes them beautiful and, well, helpful. So I think that's part of it. But I do think that, in general, I want to take a moment to just say that it is important to have different representations of disability on stage, but it's also important for us to not pigeonhole ourselves into a specific type. Like, for me, I think one of my hesitations about marketing myself as a blind soprano and being really blunt about that is that I would be pigeonholed into only playing blind characters. And that, luckily, that has not been the case, but in this instance, it is the case, which I'm not upset about that at all. But, I think we are performers first and foremost. Blind people also, duh, but like, for me, anyways, but we're also performers, and that if it serves the story to have that person disabled or non-disabled, then the performer has the right to make that choice. And I think that's really important to remember.
I just want to hear Issac and Christina talk a little bit more about how it is going to work. I mean, we could do this in a production meeting too, but I think it might be interesting. How how y'all going to do it?
He's going to put on a really bright, white, shiny glove, and I'll try my best to see.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
How's that gonna go?
I'm just kidding.
I thought the glove was going to beep the whole time.
That's exactly what's going to happen.
I'm fine
Talking
with
about
it.
the new
That, like,
innovation.
attaches to your wrist, and every beat gives you like a little bit of like a shock.
Oh my gosh, they actually have that now. It's a piece of
Really?
technology. I've tried it, and
Haptics.
I was so I was so distressed. I was just like,
Gosh, that would freak me out.
It was so distracting. I was like, oh God. But I mean, for me in the past, I personally have always felt really connected with conductors. And, I was really blessed with my time at Cal State Fullerton, and the directors, opera directors, the conductors there were amazing with, showing me how to be ahead of the music for one, just a hair. Um, and, and to listen to the musicians around me and listen specifically, if I was doing like an aria or something, I would listen to the way the people in the pit were breathing, or how the conductor was breathing as well, breathing with the music. So that's personally what I am listening for. I'm listening to the music, obviously, but if I'm listening to exactly what I'm hearing for, I'm already late. So, for me, it's more that, and just making sure that, Isaac and I will definitely work on me not looking at him, which will be very, very easy.
Well, when I heard Christina's recordings, I knew she had a really strong rhythmic sense. And when that's in place, you don't really need visual communication. Like, many times as a conductor, you don't always have the ability to give a cue, because sometimes the singer is moving, or they need to be facing another character, or the stage director is doing something insane and has them hanging upside down facing the back of the stage because and sometimes it works, but there are other ways to just to feel the music together and to listen to the breath. And sometimes those are a lot more fulfilling to really know that you're communicating, instead of just like, okay, yeah, you see what I'm doing here. Like, when it goes up, you get ready. And then when it comes down, there's the beat.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. Josh, Isaac, Katelyn, and Christina. And of course, Lizzy joining us on the Poppercast for the very first time. It's been an absolute pleasure to have all of you with us today.
Yes, same here. Thank you so much to all of the Poppercast listeners, to all of the Scene Change listeners, to Jennifer and everyone here today. It's been a lot of fun. Would you all like a chance to share your social media? I know Christina is the blind soprano, and I'm sure she wants everyone to find her, right?
People will find me. It's pretty easy.
All right. Well, just search up the blind soprano, and you will have her. For the Scene Change listeners, where can we find more about Pop?
You can find us at pacificoperaproject.com, or at PacOperaProj is our handle on all social media. We have a very extensive YouTube channel, and of course Poppercast, so everywhere you get your iTunes and everything else.
Awesome. And for the Poppercast listeners, Katelyn, do you want to go for it? She loves doing this.
I'd love to. You can find our website at nfb-pad.org, nfb-pad.org. And we're on Facebook, National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division, and on Twitter at NFB_PAD. And we are also on YouTube, NFB Performing Arts. And you can find Scene Change, SCENE Change, also anywhere you get your podcasts. So please do reach out. If you're a blind performer, we'd love to have you connect. If you are an ally to blind performers, please, we'd love to have you join and support our cause.
Thank you so much for that, Katelyn, and thank you all for joining us today. This has been another episode of Scene Change and
Pacific Opera Project's Poppercast.
I'm Katelyn McIntyre, president of the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Scene Change. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and visit our website at nfb-pad.org. There you'll find links to our social media, membership, and resources for blind performers. Thanks to everyone who makes this show happen. Scene Change is produced by Shane Lowe, Joe Schuneman, Precious Perez, Chris Nussbaum, Seyoon Choi, and Aaron Jordan, with music by Ryan Strunk and Tom Page. Remember, you can be the performer you want. Blindness is not what holds you back. We'll see you next time.